I'm Rob Sarney, and you're listening to What the Heck Fintech, where you'll experience and learn that fintech is fin life. Let's get started. Welcome back to part 2 with Rich Napolitano. If you didn't hear part 1, go back and listen to it to hear his amazing background, what he did in college, how he was a multiple founder and sold his companies, worked at digital, and had that engineering mindset, which was the base of all his success. I'm going to take that other point you talked about, selling, right? So my guess is you do have to do some selling, even though it was like a lot of people don't realize, oh yeah, I'm going there every day to the computer center. And then in the one example you gave, right? And until like you had to sell that idea, then they felt like I have to have this. I can't have anything. My life isn't complete until I have that. How did you learn that too? Or was that, and you've done it over and over and over again because you bought and sold so many startups and adding more value and wealth and everything. How'd you pick up that skill? Because that's not an engineering skill. That's not a building skill. That's a selling skill, which is a whole nother dimension. But maybe I'm wrong with that.
You know, to say it, I mean, it's mostly a listening skill and self-reflection, right? So,
Yep.
you know, I can remember one startup in particular. We were in these meetings. We had gone to the West Coast, and after our second meeting with, potential customers, I started kicking the guys under the table because I'm like, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Like you ask them a question, you don't let them answer it, and we're not listening. And if we actually listen, we might actually learn something. And so most engineers don't understand 2 ears, 1 mouth. And so the adults, and so I learned that because they're going to tell you stuff if you actually listen, right? And so that listening skill. The harder part for me was a moment when, and you and I touched on this earlier, was I learned that if I was selling, if I was talking to people that were like me, then it wasn't selling. It was just a conversation. And in reality, what I realized was it was just education. And so that crystallized for me, which is how I ended up in sales at Sun Microsystems, because what I realized for sophisticated buyers like enterprises, which is what my focus has been, I've only sold into enterprises. They're very sophisticated. You don't sell them. They're not sold. You educate them and they buy.
Mm.
It's not selling. You educate and they buy. So as an engineer, that is a very natural selling motion because we talk about technology all the time. It's what we do, right? So that was and so I can remember this. The hard part wasn't that because that was natural, just engineers hanging out, right? The hard part was when it was time for me to hire a salesperson. I could pick out an engineer from 400 yards at the time, like, oh, they're great. Right? Salesperson, that's hard for an engineer to process. So I had to learn that. That took a while and a lot of iterations. That's a whole story for a different day, which we could go into. But then I realized that it turns out that as I had more and more salespeople, I had more fun hanging out with them because they're more fun. And you learn so much in front of the customer that became my obsession. And I could just process what the customer was saying and then go back to my engineers and translate. And then they could build it.
Yep.
So that became where I lived, which is that's how I ended up being a CEO. But you got the selling thing. It wasn't selling. And people confused it too. It's not selling. To sophisticated buyers. It's not selling, it's education.
It popped in my head when you were telling that story because people tell me like, oh yeah, you're a great salesman. I go, I'm not a salesman. I wouldn't want to do that. I would never take a job to be a salesman. But you know how I don't want to sell. I want to help.
Correct.
So I come in with
Correct.
that helping tone. Is what I said. I want to help you. If you don't want my help, that's great. I'll catch you later. But I want to help you get where you want to go. And I even say that to the students in the first class of every class. I go, I'm just here to help you get
That's
you
right.
where you want to go. And
No,
that's it.
that's it. No,
And
that's
and I,
it. That's a very important. And so you have to realize too that like this is how I ended up running sales for Sun Microsystems. I mean, we sold to the biggest companies in the world, the biggest financial institutions, the biggest telecommunication companies, the government, and every agency you can imagine, right? And what people don't realize is that trust really matters. So when you're
mm,
dealing with JPMC, Citicorp, Goldman Sachs, New York Life, you go down the list of these top financial institutions, Mass Mutual, if they believe that they can trust you, they can count on you when the chips are down, that says, and I've used those relationships for 35 years. When you help, I won't name the companies, but these companies get out of a mess, often self-inflicted. 9/11 was an example of it as well. Friends for life. Friends for life. In enterprise, it's a different, especially enterprise, frankly, East Coast enterprise. It's very different than other parts of the country. People don't selling in the East Coast and into government is very different. Relationships are usually important. And it's about education, educating them in trust.
yep, yep, yeah. Yeah. Get to trust, help them, listen. I'm a big Stephen Covey guy. Seek to understand before you can be understood. You have to listen. So I want to pivot a little bit here. I'd love to hear, because let's talk a little bit about Advisor 360. So now you're in the wealth management space, right? What triggered you there? What was the aha moment or story behind the aha moment? So like, okay, I need help in the wealth management space, and you could see how you naturally just leverage all that toolkit that you just talked about.
Right.
But why wealth management? What was that trigger for you?
So the background was such that we had sold to HP, and I was I was thinking about doing some private equity stuff, and I talked with a bunch of private equity people, all the other people you would know, and here, New York, California, and so I decided that I would start proposing ideas to them. So I had this pretty big roll-up idea, which I was pursuing. And then one of the people I ran into talked to me about this spin out from Commonwealth here in Boston. Commonwealth was a large broker-dealer that had just been sold to LPL a few months ago now. But they had this tech group, and it was spun out of Commonwealth. And it was intended to be this software entity called Advisor 360, which would service multiple broker-dealers. They were built on top of Fidelity as the custodian, and they had built this end-to-end wealth management stack. And so when I talked to them, I realized really two things. It was a big engineering problem because, frankly, they had a lot of problems, a lot of architectural things, and it was selling into enterprises. And so for me, it was the same thing. Like, selling into Mass Mutual, Prudential, whatever, is New York Life. Like, these are companies I've sold into my entire career. In fact, I've sold into the corporate IT side, which is actually a bigger part of these companies. Because generally the wealth piece is just a slice of these overall businesses.
Yep.
Right.
And what unmet human need are you solving that you really got fired up about for the wealth management side?
So I realized that, and the founders, Darren Tedesco and the other guys, Matt Deitch, it became clear that there was a huge data problem associated with wealth, and it was gnarly. And I've learned a long time ago that if it's a gnarly problem, it's a barrier to entry. And it turns out Wayne Bloom, Darren Tedesco, and Matt Deitch had really developed over a long period of time some very sophisticated data ingestion technology. Now that's all being replaced by AI stuff, but it was pretty sophisticated for the time. And so they did a really good job at that very nasty, hard problem. So they would take in hundreds of data sources, reconcile them, look for breaks and disconnects, corporate actions, resolve those before the market came live. And on top of that, we built a wealth management stack, which was basically everything from the home office of the broker dealer to the office of the advisor's workstation, the advisor's office's tools, and then the end client portal. So it was an end-to-end solution with Fidelity as the back end as the custodian. And there were $1 trillion of assets opportunity on the platform. And we were trying to get the second biggest customer up, which was MassMutual, and it wasn't going so good. So let's just say the least. And we were losing over $3 million a month during the process.
Wow.
So I was like, I could probably figure that out, I think. So it was one of my biggest learnings, right? We surpassed multiple near-death experiences and built a very compelling platform. We scaled it by a factor of almost 10 in development before we went live with MassMutual. It was the middle of COVID that we did all this, so it was totally wackadoodle. And we trained some 25, 30,000 people and went live in a weekend and converted to $500 billion of assets over a weekend.
Wow.
And we went from losing $3 million a month to being profitable and paying off $60 million of debt.
Wow. Wow. That's great.
Yeah. So it was quite an adventure. I learned a ton. I obviously understand the wealth business infinitely better than I did then. Did we cover that? I lost my train of thought. I was just having some flashback to various war stories, but anyways.
Now, because you've done so much, you probably can't answer the question I'm going to ask. What are you most proud of? You've done so many things, you've helped so many people. Like, what are you most proud of? And that could be in your personal life or your professional life, because you've just done so much and you still are doing so much, right?
So I'll answer this two ways. The first is I discovered two things at Stony Brook. My passion for software and the love of my life who worked 15 yards from me. So the most important person in my life is Angela, and still the best thing to ever happen to me. And we're 40 plus years married and have 3 kids. So Angela and the kids, and that's the top of the top. And then I would say that the first startup I ran, we sold that in 96, and we made the first 15 or 20 people millionaires when $1 million was a lot of money. And I'm probably most proud of that because we changed a lot of lives and a lot of lives for family. And that's the American dream. And I am privileged and fortunate to having done that.
Wow. So, here's going to be my connection point. I bet because of the first reason you just gave was the backbone, the fuel, to have you be able to even come close to do all the things that you've done. Because no
question.
I say that because I'm married. I'm going to be 35 years coming up this year, right? And my 2 children, and my wife's still the smartest person I know. I met her before she knew any better. She was valedictorian the year ahead of me, and I was just a basketball player, And I used to say, if she saw me, if she met me, I met her in high school when I was a sophomore. If I met her in college, she would have said, "Who's this joker?" I'm luckily I met her in high school. Otherwise, I would never had a chance.
Yeah, so I don't brag about stuff. I'm going to brag about Angela. So dual major, computer science and math, dual major.
Wow.
So she's smart and beautiful, and dual major, computer science and math. We had the same job in 2 different companies when we graduated. She worked in AOSVS at Data General. I worked in VMS, originally in the Advanced Development Group, but then in VMS. And then as I started being the CEO and all this other stuff, she stayed home, so gave up her career. A mom for a long time. but like ran the family businesses. There's other things that we've done around real estate and other things. She's run that. She's like the CFO of the place, or COO, more like COO. And then the kids got older and she went back to school and got her master's. And now she does genealogical research for the Genealogical Society of Boston here on Newbury Street. So she researches genealogy. She can find where your family's from, as we just talked about earlier. So,
Yeah.
and so she's a genealogist. So, engineer, computer scientist, math major, and software engineer multiple years, mom, COO, student, genealogist.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, your wife and my wife need to meet because that's the same. That's almost different different backgrounds in like education. Because Marilyn was valedictorian, went to Tufts, Phi Beta Kappa, and got her master's at Harvard. And then we had kids, and I was doing pretty well, and then she stayed at home instead of vice versa. But she's my base. I always say I brought her down, and she brought me up. You know what I mean? Because
I just say that I married up, is what I say.
yeah. That's what they say about a good marriage, right? You both think you got the better end of the deal. That's how you know you have a good marriage. They both think that. So we'll put that to the side. So Rich, I mean, we didn't talk that much about fintech, but we talked all about fintech. The things that you talked about, that multidiscipline, you exemplify fintech as fin life. You need so many different understanding, the people side, the software side, the get down to the fundamentals, how to motivate people, how to understand people. You hit leadership in a huge way for everybody. I don't care where they are. You just hit that perfectly, that fintech is fin life. And I love, that's why I was so excited to have you on here. The stories, you always, you wow me, and you connect things so well and explain it so well in fundamentals and not like all these technical terms or whatever it is, right? So, Rich, thank you so much. We could be talking for 10 more hours easily. I know, and we will. We got to go for a beer and have a few more of this because this is fun. Wow.
So let's just take one more turn, and you can decide how you want to edit this and anything like that, right? So let's just take one more turn because I think there's one thing I've been thinking about, which is specifically around fintech. And
Yep.
so let's start that from the top for a second. So Rob, specifically in regard to fintech and technology and trends, you know I've been working on this application called PhotoPal to in a very private way, keeping privacy and allowing people to manage their photographs. And I think that people more and more want sovereignty over their data. That's really important. And as I think about fintech, the same is true. People want sovereignty over their data. They want sovereignty and they want utility. And so if you look at one of the things I've learned about wealth is, we've been very focused on, like, even at Advisor 360, we had amazing reporting, fantastic reporting, because it was based on the data thing that we talked about. And we were very good at that. And our reporting was world-class because our data was very good. And so it enabled an advisor to sit down with somebody and report to them how their performance was. Important, right? And if you looked at other companies, eMoney is an example, Money Guy Pro, Right Capital, there's others. They do a really good job of planning, okay? But I would say to you that in the time of AI, right, as people are going to want to have sovereignty over their data, they're going to want to apply AI to this in specific ways, not in static ways, not in ways that we did around reporting or in ways that we did around planning, traditional planning. It's like, oh, you're going to die at 105, you're 52 years old, you got $1 million, you got a house, you got three, that's overly simplistic. But what's important to understand is things that I think are important for all of our young people to learn. In fact, some of the recent, like the IRAs, I forget what they're calling it, IRAs for children are really important because if every child is going to get $1,000 or $2,000 at birth, then they need to understand how to use capital, okay? And so all of a sudden, we can Forget about just planning. How about educating people about capital? How about being very specific around these planning for the future, understanding that everybody in this society now, hopefully, will be an owner, right? And a brief tangent, it's very important to understand that if you study this, and I've been studying this the last few months, if you look at inflation, just general inflation, and you look at wages, over the last 30 years, wages have just scraped above inflation by a little bit. If you don't count rents, education, house purchases. If you add those, your people with just wages are getting crushed. Okay, so if you understand that data, it's not enough to just have a job and make a wage anymore. I would say two things. One, I never believed this. I believe this now. Minimum wage needs to go up because it's not keeping, given these other trends, people are not surviving. And I never believed that, but the data shows it. So that's move one. But that's not going to solve the problem. You got to get people to be owners in this society. That's why these IRAs for kids are so important. If you have that, we got to leverage AI to educate these people and have them plan at a whole other level for their future. And we're just beginning to do these things. With AI, we can break that wide open. The future of reporting, there's no more reporting. It's all AI. There's no such thing, I believe, as a static report or a static plan. It's all AI, and it's instantaneous, and it's specific, and it's customized. AI enables an age of mass customization of these things to your needs at this moment. And that's important to understand. It could change people's lives.
Yep. I totally agree, and that's where the rags come in. So my personal data that's nowhere. It's just about me and how I even more than just my risk levels, but just all about me. Leverage that. That's another dimension. My family background, everything. Like, well, that's the stuff that I'm not a generic thing anymore. It's me. And how does this relate to me? And I 100% agree. And the time value of money. I talk about this all the time in my fintech class and every finance class. People don't get that. That's the eighth wonder of the world. It's
Right.
like it's unbelievable, and we don't leverage it. And people are more so in the immediate. I need X. If I got that $1,000, I'm going to spend it right now. You know what I mean? Like, no,
No, and
like
that's
plan it
the
out, plan it out.
Yeah, we know. So that's why fintech needs to evolve to help it. Like
Yeah.
all this talk about robo advisors and all this, it was mostly crap, right?
Mm.
This is a case where you could really scale it and help the masses because everyone is going to have that, right? And we got to get the society to understand that you're an owner in this society and you need to be an owner. You need to buy a piece of property. You need to leverage these IRAs of your own, right? You need to have a side business, a side hustle. If you're going to be successful, don't just expect to live off minimum wage and Social Security. That's insanity. You need to be a capitalist. And there's 100 ways to do it.
Yeah.
And these IRA things are a powerful weapon. Michael Dell, he kicked it off, six billion or so. Not a bad start. A bunch of banks, JPMC, and others are kicking in. I think this is a game changer for our country.
I agree. No, I agree. I love it.
To help them. Our fintech guys, we need to help these people do this, and we can build these things.
Yep. Yeah. It's all doable. It's not hard. It's not hard math. It's just getting it and making it so. Take out all the jargon. This is what it means to you, right? Wow. I'm with you.
And the last piece, I want to harp on this because this is like a personal thing of mine.
Yeah, please do.
Privacy and data sovereignty is really important. It's my data. Okay, I want to be in control of my data. Not to pick on any company. Some of the companies are going away from allowing you to extract your data. First of all, it's illegal. Okay, so you need to be able to extract your data, and only you should be able to extract your data and be in control of your data. Sovereignty of that data is your right. If I was to add another amendment to the Constitution, it would be that right. The right to my information is a right, an inalienable right of a citizen to control my information. We didn't have the internet, we didn't have the cloud, we didn't have AI when they wrote the Constitution. Data sovereignty and your privacy, your right to that information, and if somebody misuses it, It's like taking a part of your life, liberty, and data privacy or something. I don't know, something like that.
Right. No, I agree. And what I'm gonna ask you a question because I don't know the answer. Is it what's going to enable that? Is it Web3, right? So the data that happens, it's my data. You can't get my data because it's riding on blockchain, and you have to have my certificate to say yes, you can use my data. I don't know what. That's the first thing that comes to my mind with what you just said, and I agree. But the world isn't ready for Web3 yet.
Well,
I mean, I think they are, but they're not.
we need to demand it. The underlying tech is these are all solvable problems, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing this firsthand. I told you about the app I'm working on, right? The first part of the app is I can aggregate all of your photos from all of your sources. I can pull them together. That's the sovereignty piece, okay? Then we figure out what to do with it. But the first thing is I'm aggregating it all, and I'm going to pull it away from you. I own it. It's my stuff. It's mine.
Yep.
And I'll decide who gets it, right?
Right.
I mean, you see this in HIPAA, right, and other regulations, right? So there are ways to solve these problems.
Right. And the California Protection Act and all that, that's like a start of that. Yeah. Like who owns the data? If you ask the bank, who owns this data? Is it the customer or them? Well, it behaves a lot that it's the bank, it's their data, and they're stewards of that data, but are they being the steward the way you want them to be the steward, right?
So
not just a bank,
data. Yeah, so there's the fintech opportunity for the future. It's evolved from just aggregating the data aggregation. Okay, we did that. Then we did reporting. Then we did planning.
Yep.
I want to have my sovereign data in my control, and then I want to do this next level of understanding of me. To your point, like, it would be useful to understand if you have a heart condition in your family and it's genetic, that would be an interesting input, but I don't really want that out there, right?
Right.
I don't want that out there. I want to do that analysis myself. I want to have sovereignty to that information. Yeah. Because that affects how I plan.
It's interesting. I invest in I'm an angel investor, and I invested in a company that actually does the genetics to pick out what that disease would be, so you can plan your life. I said that's a fintech. I said to that's a fintech opportunity. They're like, what? Because then you make different decisions once you know that, so you can maximize your wealth for that time frame you're in. If you don't know that, some people don't want to know it. That's their call. But if you do know it, that's a powerful tool, so you can make different decisions because that's happening in 20 years. X.
You got it. Right.
I'm with you. Wow. Rich, you took this thing to a whole nother level. It's awesome. I'm not cutting anything. I'm telling you right now. So I'm not. It's rolling. It's rolling. So, Rich, I want to say thank you so much. We got to keep this conversation going. Forget about the cameras, and we got to have some fun here. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Again,
Rich. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for what you do. I've always admired you. You're generous with your giving to other people. I see it all the time. And your work at WPI was fantastic. So when you said, would you come, how could I say no to you? I just couldn't. You're a great guy. And thank you for all that you've always done.
Well, Rich, I owe you. Thank you. And pull me in anytime you want. Yeah. I think we're we're different, but we're the same in so many like core fundamentals that I'd love to help you some way if I can.
Right, but I told you, you're from the north. I'm from the south. And my wife can prove it.
And for the crowd, we were talking before we hit the record button, talking about how I'm Sarni, and from Avellino, and he goes, yeah, I could tell by the color of your skin. It's because you're the north. I'm like, what? I never heard that before. It's great. And he knew. It's unbelievable. I love it. So that's a little backstory to the story you just heard. So, Rich, I'm gonna say thank you so much, and everybody. I hope you enjoyed this because I thoroughly did. Okay, I want to say bye, everybody, and have a great day.
Ciao.
Thank you for listening to What the Heck FinTech. Make sure you tune into our next episode as we continue to interview fintech leaders and share real-world stories from across the fintech ecosystem, so you can fully understand that fintech is fin life.